this is the most radical. Since
You've
you
told me this before, which I think is just...
I know. I know. It's crazy. It was the scariest thing before I did it. And I would say it's the most beneficial thing since.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of The Rachel Cruze Show. And I'm really excited about this episode because I have one of the people in my life that I just think is wonderful, a dear friend, and the fact that we get to hang out when it comes to work is just the cherry on top. So she is a New York Times bestselling author, an incredible Bible teacher, and she is the founder and visionary of the If Gathering. She is the one and only Jennie Allen. Jennie, welcome. I know. Thanks for being here. I tell everyone my joke is always, I always will call someone a friend under one filter, and that is if I have your cell phone number. So
yeah, we are friends.
We are friends. And actually see each other.
Well, and have had slumber parties. So I think that officially makes us very good friends.
We have had slumber parties. That is true. That is true. So great. Well, I'm pumped to have you on because your new book, it's done incredible, Jennie. It's been so fun to be able to watch it. And it's called Find Your People, Building Deep Community in a Lonely World. And I remember having you on. You were on the show, I guess it's probably been about a year and a half. And it was kind of during the pandemic when Get Out of Your Head, your book about anxiety, launched right alongside a pandemic, which was perfect timing. And now we're coming almost kind of out of a pandemic. And the stats, which you know this better than I do, of loneliness and depression, all of it is just skyrocketed. And so this book has come out. So I just want to know, what was the big motivation? What was your heart behind saying, okay, this is the book that needs to be next?
Well, I look really smart or prophetic because both were timed so well. But no, this was all planned, many, many years ago. I planned to write this book. I was actually traveling in Uganda, and I saw two women that were walking down to get water, and they were together with their big buckets on their head, and they were giggling like little schoolgirls. And I was so jealous. I thought, that looks fun. And I know that is a terrible thing to say because they're having to take care of their families and water is such an issue for the day. But there was something in their eyes that I was craving, and there was something in their posture and their connection with each other. And so fast forward a few years, we moved to Dallas, and we're starting to rebuild a life pretty much from scratch in Dallas, Texas, with 4 kids and just needing to all 6 of us make friends. And so I just thought, I'm going to do this better. I'm going to look at how people have lived throughout history and see if there is a better way to make friendships. And so sure enough, there is. We are not very good at it in the West. And I've learned so much, and I really do believe I have some of the richest, deepest friendships I've ever had in my life right now.
Okay, so compare and contrast for me, just we'll go stereotype. We won't we'll just kind of say the stereotype friend in America today, where people are like, yes, I have friends. What is that versus what you're talking about when it comes to literally living in deep community, people where you are known?
Yeah.
Talk about kind of that contrast.
Let me start with what I saw in the villages, and then I think the obvious, difference will appear. So when I go to any village in a third world country, and you come to the little places where they live, and you come into the town center or the village center, there's usually a fire there. There usually is a place to do their wash there together. There's no doors on many of the huts. They are raising their kids together. There's kids everywhere. You see a great sense of communal parenting happening, where those kids will get yelled at by people that aren't their parents. You see also just this sense of shared mission that they're surviving together. And so there's a required sense of dependence on each other. I remember one village we visited, our friends had sent ahead some clothes. They'd sent it to specifically a family that they were connected to, and all of the village was wearing the clothes they'd sent because, that family just passed it out. They didn't even consider, gosh, this was for us. This was a gift to us. They just knew, hey, other people need things. And so there's really, truly very little that we are similar to in that. And, I wanted something more when I landed in Dallas. I wanted to feel a sense of regular connection, daily connection with people. And And that was going to take changing everything the way that I had friended in the past, which let's contrast. So typically, if we see people, it's planned a month in advance, a week in advance, set at a certain time, at a certain place. Rarely would we just show up or pop into a friend's house. We would have a lot of work going back and forth to even agree on a time that we could do it. There would never be a sense of wanting to burden or bother anyone. We are not quick to borrow anything, more or less, ask someone for help. And so we would never intrude on someone's parenting. We would never intrude on somebody's doorstep. That's just not how we do it. We have gates, we have fences, we have alarm systems. Like, we are protective. Yeah. And so it's everything about it's differently. And my friend that's a pastor in Rwanda, he said, the more money people get, the more isolated they become. And that's even true for him. He said, of people I see in Rwanda, when they get more money, they're able to build the fences and all that. And I'm certainly not saying that we have to, pursue poverty to experience this, but I do believe that we have to overcome our fears of needing each other, and we have to overcome our fears of initiating and looking for those people that are really approximate to us, that live close to us, and begin to reframe the way that we're actually involving ourselves in each other's lives.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, because I've even found, even recently, just realizing things about myself where independence is so applauded. And there's elements of it that are fine, right? For sure. But man, it is the thing that people just will clap for you, that you did this on your own and all of this. And so not only does that, eliminate a level of a God moment, right? Of like, yeah, you're not doing it on your own strength, but also for yourself, there's an isolation there that I am doing it on my own versus having people around me to do life with. So you give really practical tools and steps and examples in the book about what this looks like real life community, like what you're explaining. Do you have just maybe 2-3 examples of hey, here's an example of what you could do to get a taste of what you're talking about?
So one of the first things I did when I moved to Dallas was I started praying for 5 friends within 5 miles. And this actually came from Italy. I walked in a grocery store there in a little bitty village, and everybody stopped and they were like, who are these strangers in our little bitty village that wasn't very touristy? And it bothered me. I was like, gosh, I want to be able to see friends at the grocery store. I want to be able to run into people. So I really prayed. We moved near our family. We moved just a few blocks from my husband's family. And we really made intentional effort to find friendships near to us. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't still have, like you, many, many friends across, all spread out. Those are still some very rich, deep friendships. But we need those people that can come over on a Tuesday night and say, hey, you don't seem okay. What is wrong with you? Get dressed. We're going out. You just need those people that are going to invade your life and bring you a casserole, right? Like the good old days. And when something goes wrong. And so my real first thing, the most practical thing, is look for who's already around you, who is walking their dog in front of your house. And it doesn't have to be exactly same life stage, exactly same age. Just look for people that you're going to naturally run into. Because what I talk about in the book is really building a community, a village, not just finding your 2 to 3 to 4 best friends, although that is a part of this, and we all need that inner circle of people to share our lives with. But we're looking for something bigger than that. We're looking for the network of people around us that are going to help us make decisions and parent and know, if we're single, to be a part of their families. If we're married, to help us when we're in a big fight. We're looking for more than just 2 to 3 people that we can confide in. We're looking for people to do life with. And so that's a really different way to look at living. And yet I think we're coming out of a season where people are craving that. And so practically speaking, look for who's around you, and then awkwardly initiate. And that is the hardest part for people, right? They don't want to bother people, and so they don't initiate, or they've initiated a lot of times in the past and they don't feel like it's gone well. And I hear that story all the time, and I just want to say that's real. People are more isolated than they've ever been, and they've even forgotten what it's like to just have dinner with people. So doing this right now, especially in the environment that we're all living in, is extra tender, and we have to be extra brave. But the good news is everybody's lonely. So we're looking at the numbers prior to the pandemic, 3 and 5 were lonely. So after the pandemic, we've got to see numbers 4 and 5, 5 and 5. So you can just about count on the fact that the people you're going to pursue are lonely too. And so don't be afraid to be obnoxious. Just be like, you are going out with me and I don't care. You're not staying home and watching Netflix. Just fight for people to spend time with you. And that's going to take effort on our part. And I know everybody's tired and it's asking a lot, but I promise you it's worth it. And that connection that you'll find on the other side, you wouldn't trade it for anything. And so I guess there's part of this that I'm saying, trust me, you need this, you actually want this, and it will change your life in the best ways. I mean, this is living, like relationships, that is life, right? We all need this.
Absolutely. And so when I talk about money on this end, I'm always like, hey, do this journey with people. Yes, with your spouse if you're married, but find people that are doing the same thing and walk this journey. So what would you say to someone that you're like, okay, that you, Jennie Allen, see the importance, even when it comes to money, but parenting, marriage, all of these buckets of our lives, that it is so key to have people. So talk about the richness and what comes out of that for these parts of your life.
So we're in a small group right now. I have more than, that small group of friends that make up my village, but that small group of friends I'm accountable to, right? Like I'm telling them what's happening in every part of my life. One thing we do is we bring our finances to each other. Now, this is the most radical. Since
You've told me this before, which I think is just
I know. It's crazy. We bring our numbers, right? We bring not just our percentages, what we give and all that. We bring actually like, this is how much income we have coming in. This is how much we have going out. This is these categories. They see how much we spend on everything. I got a hard time for my clothes budget last year. I was like, it's post-COVID and I had a lot of events. But anyway, they're giving me a hard time. And I love it because they're not legalistic, right? These are people that just want me and Zach to live faithfully. And they don't want the reason that I'm taken out of ministry and life to be my finances. And so they're going to be protective of us. They're going to look at how we spend our money and go, you know what? That's not wisdom for 5 years from now. And where's the college money going to come from? And where's this, so they ask questions. It's the scariest thing before I did it. And I would say it's the most beneficial thing since. I mean, of all the things we do in community, finances actually are the most helpful and beneficial because we don't feel alone. We don't feel guilty if we spend money on something because they've really screened it and asked us the questions, how does this help build the kingdom? It's not just like your selfish desire. It's like, how are you going to use your home to help build the kingdom? And so we're looking at our finances from a lens of, are we going to be able to stand by this in heaven? That's really how we view it. And so I do believe there is such a conviction that grows in us as we walk together with other people. But I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think there's a part of life we should ever do alone. I don't see it other than spending time with Jesus alone, some resting, right? You should, even as a single or even as an introvert, you should be putting people in your life at every turn. It is just not the way anyone has lived prior to the Industrial Revolution throughout the history of mankind. So, I mean, I don't know. This is some big experiment we're in the midst of right now, not just technology, although that's part of it. It's this idea that we can do anything alone because that's not how people have thought, and it's certainly not how people of faith think.
Yep. So when you are in community with people, what do you do when you disagree? Like if something comes up, right? And
never happens.
Never happens. We always agree on everything, whether it's a parenting style or maybe, one person's like, no, I'm trying to get out of debt. I'm sacrificing where everyone else is like, oh no, I'm okay with, this level of debt, whatever it is, right? So you could put in any subject. What do you do?
Well, I think it depends on how big a deal it is, right? So there have been times that our group has faced something where we think this is a pretty big deal. And what's cool about the group is we all have chosen to be there, right? Like we're all signed up for this way of life. Yeah. And so we're asking people to speak into our lives. We're not just surprised. Like we're not showing up and going, oh gosh, this is shocking that they're bringing this up. No, we're expecting it. And one of the 5 patterns of deep relationships I talk about in the book is accountability, which I think probably was the most surprising to people because most people don't have it. And yet it actually builds the deepest friendships and then of course the next one is consistency and staying even after you get in a fight, right? So you gotta, it's just kind of inevitable. It's a progress of deep friendship that you will have conflict. And so that idea that you're gonna hold each other accountable and at some point your flesh probably often, you're gonna push back against it. You're gonna go, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Or I am comfortable with that, and I don't want to listen to you. And I think that's where we just have a lot of grace for each other. One time, someone went against what the majority of the group felt, and they made a decision. And we were, we all got on board, and we supported them. And what's awesome is that was actually a good decision. And over time, it's proven to be a great decision. And so, we weren't sure they had enough to buy a house, but they did. And it was close, but they did it and they went for it. And we all prayed over that house and we also helped them move into that house and we supported that decision. And then later, it really was a good decision. So, we're not perfect. We're not sitting there. I think there's wisdom in counseling and many voices, but we're not sitting there lording over people and like going to beat them up if they don't do what we think,
So good. Lots of grace. Lots of grace. So you mentioned technology, which I do want to touch on because social media obviously has become like this huge thorn in the flesh of everything in life, I feel like sometimes. And so how has that played a role in a negative way? And then what are ways that you see, okay, you can actually use it and have, I don't know, you can use it as a tool in a healthy way. So there's the unhealthy and the healthy. So what have you found that balance when it comes to having deep community?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. This could be a place of deep connection. It has been for all of us for the last few years because we couldn't, we depended on Zoom to talk to anybody, to see our families, right? Like I'm so grateful for FaceTime and for Zoom and even social media. So much of what I get to do is through digital technology. I'm so grateful for it. I run an entire ministry that is digital technology. It's what we do. We resource people out there. But let me say this. Digital technology should serve our in-person relationships. So when I'm sending something out through technology, I'm trusting and hoping, even my books, that people are going to gather together and discuss them, that they're going to gather together and experience that content together. I tell people on my podcast all the time, get your people together and have a discussion around this. We provide tools for them to talk about these things. Everything I do through digital technology is to give tools and resource people that are working through life together, hopefully in person. I think the opposite is what's happened, though. We largely have depended on digital technology to source our relationships rather than digital technology to be a gift and make our in-person relationships stronger and better. And so I always just say, you can have both. You really can. But you've got to prioritize. You're going to end up prioritizing one. And my plea would be to prioritize your real life in-person relationships, because who's going to be there for you when the hits the fan? You're going to need, you get that diagnosis, when you find out something happened to one of your children, when you go through a really difficult season in your marriage, like who you're going to want to reach out to is going to be the people that can run over and see you and walk through that with you. And so I just hope and believe we're at a point where all of us see that we need this and we'll prioritize it.
For sure. Oh, it's so good. I feel like you just speak so much life into it because we are craving it as a culture. And then there are people that are just like, literally, they probably feel stuck when it comes to relationships and friendships and all of that. And it seems like, too, the older you get, the harder it can be at times, right? Because you're used to going through elementary school, middle school, high school, college. Like it
gets more awkward.
And then when you're plucked out into the world, it is. So anyone listening or watching, that encouragement that Jennie gives, I mean, seriously, guys, do it. Live in a level of community that you are known and that you can do life with, because it changes your perspective, it changes your quality of life. So I love it so much, Jennie, and the fact that you wrote a book on it. It's so good. Okay, before we close up, the one question I always ask everyone on an interview, and it can be something big, something small, doesn't matter, but what's one thing that you're doing with money that is creating a life that you love?
Well, I'll just have to go with this theme. I think being in community around our finances is the greatest decision we've ever made. And I'm just so grateful for people that help us get more creative. I mean, to see the vision of other people and how they tithe and how they give away money, it has been so inspiring. And my husband and I, because of that, are giving away more money than we ever have, because we watch other people do it and it becomes contagious. So don't be afraid to do this. Gather some safe friends and try it. It's scary and risky, but I promise you it could change everything.
So good. Oh, I love it. All right, you guys, find your people. You can pick up this book wherever books are sold. And where can everyone find you, Jennie?
Yeah, you can go to jennieallen.com, JennieAllen.com.
So great. Jennie, thanks so much. I so appreciate you and all the work that you do.
Too.
I love having you on. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.